Welcome, crime family. This is our Idaho episode of True Crime.
State of Mind. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Brooke. And before we dive into today's episode, just a couple things I wanted to tell you guys. So, first off, we researched the hell out of these, but we're not perfect, so we're going to miss some things. We're going to get some things wrong, so don't hate us.
Please don't hate us. We're trying
our best. Yeah. Another thing is, we're gigglers. Like, I would like to say I only giggle when I'm uncomfortable, but I literally giggle all the time. Like, I'm
That's
just a
true.
giggler. So, that's true, yes. And I say, right? Way too much. And I am aware of that, but I still keep saying it.
It's like really hard to change. I'm the same. I say situation all the time, so there we go.
Well, and it's something that I never realized I did until I re-listened to these podcasts, and I'm like, I say right way too much. But yeah, so okay, guys, before we dive into, I have a really quick story I have to tell you guys. And Andrea doesn't know this yet because this just barely happened, and I was like, I was going to tell you this, but I think I'll save it for the podcast. Because we're doing all these, and my husband keeps teasing me because we do all these murdery podcasts, and I listen to all these murdery podcasts. Shout out to my favorite murder and morbid and crime junkies. We love you. And so I DoorDash on my side gig. I DoorDash. I'm a DoorDash delivery person. So I got a DoorDash delivery tonight, and it's about almost 10 o'clock at night at this time. And it's for CVS, which means that you actually have to shop for the items and then deliver them. And it's usually just a few items, and sometimes it's a pretty good payout. So this one was a pretty good payout. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. It was only 4 items. So I accept the delivery and immediately get a phone call from the person that I'm going to be delivering to, the customer. And she says, if I Venmo you, will you get me a couple of things from Walgreens? And I'm like, a couple of, like, you want me to do your grocery shopping for you? Like, this
what?
is weird. This has never happened before, guys. And I'm like, okay, it's CVS. You know it's CVS, right? Not Walgreens. And she's like, oh, yeah, Walgreens. And I'm like, CVS. And I'm like, okay. So she's like, I'm wondering if you can get me some of the Lysol cleaner. And I'm like, Lysol cleaner? And she's like, the toilet bowl kind, like the liquid kind with the crooked neck, like that kind. And I'm like, okay, how many do you need? And she says, I need 3 of them. She's like, yeah, let's go with 3 of them. And I'm like, 3 toilet bowl cleaners at 10 o'clock at night? Like, girl, what you doing?
That's intense.
So then I'm like, yeah, okay. So then I get to CVS and find out that she's ordered 4 large bottles of alcohol, like first aid alcohol, 91% alcohol. Yeah, right? 32-ounce ones. So they're pretty big. So I'm like, what the hell do you do with 4 huge bottles of alcohol and 3 bottles of toilet cleaner, but clean up a murder, right? So
yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So then I get in the store and they only have 2 of these bottles, these big bottles of alcohol. So I text her and I say they only have 2 of them, but they have 2 also of the rubbing alcohol, the one that's only like 70% alcohol. So I'm like, do you want those instead, or do you want just these 2 of these big bottles? Or there's also smaller bottles of the alcohol that I could also get. And she's like, no, I need the large bottles, and I need 4 of them. And I said, I understand you need 4 of them, but there's only 2 on the shelf. And so I send her a picture of the 2 on the shelf, and she says, yeah, that big bottle, I need 4 of those. And I'm like, I sent you the picture to show you that there's only 2 of them. Like, this is such a weird conversation. So she's like, okay, wait. And she kind of pauses for a minute, and then she says, okay, just get me the 2 bottles. And I'm like, the 2 big bottles. And I'm like, okay. So I get the 2 big bottles, I check out and everything, and I've got her toilet bowl cleaner too. So I leave. And I'm like starting to think, I'm gonna get murdered. I'm gonna get murdered at this delivery. So I text my husband the address and I'm like, this is where I'm going. Like, it's a female that's the customer, and she sounds super young. She's probably, I'm guessing, in her 20s. And so I'm like, but I do a murder podcast and I'm about to get murdered. So I texted him, I'm like, here's the address. And then I realized that on my way to this address, I actually kind of passed my house. So I'm like, you know what? Scratch that. Will you go with me? Like, this is really sketchy, and I'll tell you the whole story when I get there, but I just, it feels really sketchy. I feel really uncomfortable. Will you go with me? So he goes with me, and it's not in a crazy part of town. Like, it's on the east side. It's not super sketchy area. It's a nice area. And so I was kind of, so I'm like telling him this whole story, and he's like, you listen to murder way too much.
There's not too much murder.
Right? There's no too much. Yeah. I'm prepared for this, right?
Exactly.
So
you know what to watch out for.
Exactly. So we get to the house, and it's a really cute house, and there's like Amazon packages on the porch. I mean, everything's super like legit. Like, it seems like, okay, this chick is just cleaning her house at 10 o'clock at night. So I guess I have no idea. So I sent her my Venmo information, and she did Venmo me, and she did tip me pretty well. So I have no complaints there. And I was just like, and so I get back to the car, and I get in the car, and, you know, and we're leaving. And Jeremy's like, if she's young, because I don't know, because I didn't ever meet her, but her Venmo picture, like, she looked pretty young, but it's like a teeny tiny little picture, so I don't know. But he's like, I bet you anything she, like, had a party, her parents are coming home in the morning, somebody spilled wine on the leather couch, and she Googled it, and it said, clean it with alcohol. 91%.
Probably.
And toilet bowl cleaner, if that doesn't work. So that's my story for the night, guys.
Oh, my
I didn't
God.
get murdered. I'm still here.
Thank
Everything's
goodness.
great. All right.
Oh, man.
So, we're going to dive on into this one. Okay, so today's episode is Lloyd Magruder, and this is Idaho. And we're going to talk about the Magruder Massacre. So, we're going to go take a trip in the way, way back machine to 1800s. 1863, actually, is when this happened. But, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the... oh, by the way... If anybody watches SNL, there's like a whole segment, and there's a movie too, a whole segment on this detective. It's kind of like a play on MacGyver, I think. I actually don't remember what the skit is about, but the song says Magruder. So the whole time I'm researching this, I'm thinking in my head, Magruder. And I think it has Kristen Wiig in it, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. Anyways, yeah, so the whole time I'm thinking of that. But it's Magruder with a D. Anyway, so he was born July 7th, 1825 in Montgomery County, Maryland. So, and then in 1847, he married Carolina Pelham before he joined the military. He had 4 children, Sarah, John, Eliza, and James. They were 15, 11, 9, and 7 years old when he died. So, spoiler alert, he dies because he's our victim, guys. So he fought in the Mexican War as a second lieutenant, and I'm not real versed in history, so I had to look up what that was. Don't at me. So the Mexican-American War was a conflict between the United States and Mexico, and they fought it from April 1846 to February 1848, so almost 2 years. And it stemmed from the annexation of the Republic of Texas by the U.S. in 1845, and it was a dispute over whether Texas ended at the Nueces River, which was what Mexico claimed, or the Rio Grande, which is what the U.S. claimed. So basically it was a fight over the borders of Texas versus Mexico. So he then resigned from the military, and he moved to California to try his hand in the gold fields. And he had initial success, but then it was followed by very, very bad luck. So he decided to join the California legislature. So he was the sheriff of Yuba County in 1854. He studied law under the Justice of the Peace, or he became Justice of the Peace, actually. And he even ran a mercantile, and then he became a county clerk. So he kind of just did a little bit of everything in California. Then he was did. Like, right? So then he moved to Lewiston, Idaho in July of 1862 because Idaho kind of like recruited him. They were like, hey, we're this new territory. we kind of like you. So come on over. So he came over to Lewiston, Idaho, and became to be part of, like, a delegate for them. He was known as a very good man, well known in Idaho's mining camps as a trader and pack train operator, bringing them supplies. So he did pretty well for himself, and people knew it. So what he did was he, rather than actually mine the gold, because he wasn't great at that, he actually, since he owned a mercantile, he ran a mercantile, so he, like, brought all the miners supplies. So he would bring them, like, all of their supplies to be mining, including, like, food to eat while they were out mining, you know, panning trays, things like that. So after this massacre, since 1980, the U.S. Forest Service has a 101-mile single-lane, mostly unimproved road that's called the Magruder Corridor, that's named after this guy. It's through Idaho and Montana along the trail that Magruder used at the time of his murder. So this was, like, where he went to deliver all of the supplies. There's also a Magruder Creek, which is in Idaho County, Idaho, and it's just south of the location where he was killed. So I found all this information on him, and then there were four people that were in his crew, like in his pack crew, that were also killed, but I didn't find a whole lot of information on them. So there's Charles Allen, who was a gold miner, and that's literally all I could find on him. There was Bill Phillips, who was also a gold miner. So Charles Allen was actually from Lewiston, and he left with Magruder from Lewiston, Idaho, to go deliver supplies. Bill Phillips was a miner that was at the place they were going to, that was a miner, that kind of was like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to join up with you guys. And then there was two brothers, Horace and Robert Chalmers or Calmers. I was going to look that up and I forgot. It's spelled CH, so I'm thinking it's Chalmers, but I don't know. So Horace was 29 at time of death. Robert, I could not find a time of birth date, so I don't know how old he was. They were born in Kentucky, and they moved to Boone, Missouri in 1850, and then they met up with Lloyd Magruder and his crew after, like, because they were up at the mines in, it was Idaho at the time, but now it's Montana. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So since this crime took place back in the 1800s, there wasn't a ton of information on the perpetrators. I tried to dig deep. I know there's information out there. I honestly just couldn't find it. I know there's a book, if anybody's ever interested in that. I'll let you know at the end what the book is called. I can't recall right now.
The blood something. The blood.
Yeah. The blood something. Yeah. I'm like, dang it, I just looked at it and I had it in my head, but, you know, whatever. But, yeah, so we have the three perpetrators in this case, James Roman, David Renton, and Christopher Lower is what I have here. Mm-hmm. Billy Page was roped into the plot, or he says he was, by being threatened with death if he didn't comply. He was later given immunity for giving information that led to the trio's incarceration and death by hanging. So that's pretty much all I could find on a little bit of their backstories, but we'll get into more information once I get into, like, the trial and when stuff like that. So,
okay, yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah, this is, you know, only 140-ish, no, 60-ish years ago. So, you know,
it was a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. This was when Idaho wasn't even, well, there weren't really states. Idaho was the territory of Idaho. So, yeah. I mean, this is a long time ago. Yeah. So in August of 1863, Lloyd set out from Lewiston, Idaho for Virginia City, which, like I said, is currently in Montana, but then it was a part of the Idaho territory. And he had a mule train of about 40 mules and 6 horses, and I saw those numbers different in every single source I had. There was some that said 20 mules, there were some that said that there were 80 mules, so I kind of went with the median there. 40 mules and 6 horses. So it was a 300-mile journey. Holy cow. Can you imagine walking 300 miles?
No.
Over, mountains.
I can't imagine walking like
3
miles.
Exactly. I know my daughter complains about running the mile at school. I'm like, girl, I feel you. I always hated the mile at school.
Oh, too. It's so horrible. I'm with her.
Yeah. So he was loaded up with mining equipment that he was going to sell to the gold miners that were there in Virginia City. So about a day after he left, he was met by David / Doc Howard / David Renton. That's all one person. Christopher Lowry, and James Romaine or Roman. So these men had told everyone in Lewiston that they were headed towards Oregon, which is the opposite direction of Montana, in case you don't know. But they had every intention of robbing Magruder's crew and returning to Lewiston with his money. So the trio, they left like a day late to kind of throw everybody off. But because Magruder had so many mules and he was traveling super slow, because they were all loaded down. So he was traveling super slow. So they caught up with him pretty quickly. So just that day. So they kind of met up with him and they kind of gave him this ruse of like, yeah, we're also headed to Virginia City to collect gold, to be gold miners. But they had their eyes on his gold because he was going to go sell all these supplies to the miners. Then he would have the gold that they gave him for the supplies, and he would be traveling all the way back to Lewiston with that gold, so 300 miles. So 4 or 5 days into their journey, they also met up with trapper Billy Page, who joined the group, but he claims to have not known anything about the murderous plot that lay ahead, because he didn't really know any of them. He just kind of met up with them. So once they arrived in Virginia City, these 3 men had become entrusted by Lloyd. So by the time that they got there, he was kind of like, hey, these are good guys. Maybe they could help me sell this mining equipment. Like, we've gotten to know each other over this time. So they said that they would help him sell the equipment. Like, they would all separate and with some of the supplies and go to the different mining camps and sell it. So Lloyd ended up selling all of his equipment, and I saw different amounts that he made, but I saw $18,000 and $25,000, which in 1863 is equivalent to about $500,000 today, so $500,000. So he just had that basically in cash on him. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Walking home with 300 miles. That's a lot. So some kind of interesting things about the gold dust. So while the rest of the country had started using paper currency in 1861, a lot of the West still preferred gold and silver because that's where they were finding the gold and silver, was in the West. So they still used the gold and silver coin as currency in 1863. So 2 years later, and they're still holding on to that gold. We don't want your paper. So it was a common sight to see people like at the like when they were buying things, they'd have like a coin purse that was full of just gold dust, and then they would have a scale and they just kind of pour it out, and it was based upon the weight, how much weight of gold you had, what it was worth. So that was kind of interesting. They weren't like, it wasn't like coins. It was like powder. So I thought that was kind of cool. They did have, like, you could turn the powder into coins, but you had to go to a mint in order to do that. And the closest one to them in Lewiston, Idaho, was in San Francisco, California. So obviously not very close. Yeah. But so there was, and also the value of gold wasn't universally the same. So you could go like from one town over, it'd be like double the what it's worth than the next town over. So you could kind of like decide where you were going to buy your goods based upon what gold was actually worth. So kind of interesting. So because of that, because it was kind of worth different amounts in varying places, Magruder preferred to bring the dust to Lewiston because it was worth more in Lewiston than it was in the little towns along the way. So, and there were no banks in the mining camps, so most miners would hide their gold dust in containers like baking powder cans, and then some of them would bury them, and then just come back for them later. So, that was kind of cool.
That is that's interesting for sure.
Right? Like, who knows? Along this whole, like, route between Lewiston and Virginia City, Montana, there might be little baking powder cans full of gold.
I mean, maybe. You never know. Hunters? That's crazy to think about.
Right? Treasure hunters? Yeah. Go find them.
Yeah, exactly. And then let us know.
Right? And baking powder cans, I don't know. I mean, baking powder cans now are metal, so I imagine you could get them with like a metal detector. I don't know if they were then, though.
That's true.
But miners who found gold were always in danger of robbery or murder, of course. And so a lot of them deposited their gold with saloon keepers or shop owners. So they would kind of like, it was kind of like a bank. Like they would just take it to the saloon and they'd give them all their gold dust and they'd be like, here, hold on to this for me and I'll be back in, a week or two. And I'll just spend it. I don't know how they did it. I didn't know how that worked. But they just gave it to saloon keepers and shop owners. It was pretty common. So on October 3rd, 1863, the group started back for Lewiston from Virginia City. And Magruder had no idea that these three men had planned to steal from him from the very, very start. And the fateful deed took place on October 11th, so 8 days after they had left Montana and were headed back to Lewiston. And it happened in the Bitterroot Mountain Range in the territory of Idaho. So Lewiston is like right on the border of Idaho and Oregon. And I thought it was on the border of Idaho and Utah because there's a Lewiston, Utah that's like right on the border. It's right near Logan. Mm-hmm. So I didn't realize that Lewiston was so far north in Idaho, but it's like it's further north than Boise. So it's pretty far up there. That's crazy. Yeah. So at this time, on October 11th, the trapper, Billy Page, had joined the murderous trio, of course, and they told him of their plot and told him, like, if he did anything to stop them or if he told anybody that they would kill him. So that's what he says happened. He said that the reason that they kept him alive was because he was a trapper, so he knew the area really well, and they were kind of like, well, we're kind of out here in the middle of nowhere, and we don't know how to get back to Lewiston. Like, they were like, we don't have GPS, guys. The GPS is not working. So that's why they kept him alive. So I saw two different versions of what actually happened, and I couldn't find, like, which one was... I think these are, like, two different versions what Billy Page said happened, so who knows which one really happened. But he said that Lloyd Magruder and Christopher Lowry were standing watch of the camp on their trek back in the mountains. And Billy Page was watching over the mules, but he knew what was about to happen. And I did see that stated in pretty much every article, that he knew that the murders were going to take place, but he did not participate himself. One article said that Doc Howard had actually told Billy Page directly about the plot halfway back on the journey to Lewiston. So he had already told him beforehand. And then there was like another article that said that he didn't know until right before it happened. So I don't know what's right. Right. So the rest of the men were sleeping at the camp. Doc Lowry had an axe hidden under his coat, which he pulled out and hit Magruder with in the back of the head, and he died quickly. And then the other men were all killed while they slept back at camp near the fire under their blankets, and Romaine and Howard killed them. And then they rolled their bodies up in their blankets and then just threw them over a cliff into a ravine. That's one way to get rid of the bodies, I guess.
I guess.
I mean, it'll do the job.
Yeah.
So then the other version I heard that I read was that Lloyd Magruder and Christopher Lowry were sitting around the fire drinking coffee. Magruder leaned forward to warm himself by the fire, and that's when Christopher hit him on the back of the head with the axe. Renton and Howard were not there because he wasn't there because he was pretending to fetch firewood for the fire, and Christopher and Romaine then killed the other four men. So basically they're saying in this version Doc Howard didn't kill anybody, but Christopher and Romaine, they killed all the other people. And then again in this version, they also rolled the bodies up in the blankets and threw them over the ravine. And so anyway, either way, I mean, they killed all these people with a freaking axe. Like, yeah. Lizzie Borden style. Yikes.
Yeah. That's brutal.
Oh, so brutal. And then at daylight, the murderers killed all the mules, but spared the horses so they could ride them and pack out their stuff. Yeah, because they were like, I think that their thought process was that they were like, if we return with all of his mules, but without him, like, it's going to be more noticeable than if we just ride up on horses. So that's why.
Yeah,
so they killed, right? So they killed, and they did the same thing with them.
Why didn't they just leave them?
Yeah. I don't know why they didn't just leave them. They could, I mean, it was snowy, but still, like, they probably would have had a better shot. But they literally killed them and threw them in the ravine as well. So, can you imagine, like, these people that find, like, 4 bodies and, like, 60 mule corpses or 40 mule corpses in this ravine? You'd be like, what the hell happened here?
I know. What is going on?
Right?
Some kind of witchcraft. What's happening?
So then they quietly returned to Lewiston, Idaho, and they arrived there on October 18th, 1863. So that's 7 days, so a week after the murders.
All right. So we'll move a little bit into the investigation now. So Hill Beachy, he's a proprietor of the Luna House where the stage stopped. He became suspicious. The 4 men boarding the stagecoach thought that one of them looked familiar. So it was just like something triggered, and he got that kind of oogie feeling, I guess. And he's like, oh, man. So this is when he sent a guy named Shoal Kenny to Elk City to see if he can get any news about Magruder's whereabouts. When another packer returned that left after Magruder, Beachy was definitely suspecting foul play at this point. Beachy went to the Idaho Territorial Acting Governor to get an arrest warrant for the 4 men. Beachy and Thomas Farrell eventually caught up with fugitives in San Francisco. So the perpetrators' attorney, Alexander Campbell, claimed that Beachy could not prove that Magruder was dead or produce any evidence. So local officials in San Francisco wouldn't help him to get them back to Idaho.
Even though they had the warrant from the governor of Idaho? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they were basically saying that they didn't have any evidence. Like, there's nothing that ties. Yeah, there's nothing that ties them to the murder of Magruder because they don't have a body at this point.
And they don't have anything. They don't have any. Yeah. I mean, really, all they have is the suspicions of Beachy. Yeah.
Yeah, Beachy. What a name! What a name!
I know. Isn't his first name Hill?
Yeah, Hill Beachy.
Hill Beachy.
So we'll just call him Beachy because it's fun to say.
Right.
So. Yeah, but so they wouldn't give them the extradition. So he actually went to Governor Leland Stanford to allow him to extradite the prisoners back to Idaho Territory, and it was granted at this time.
So I wonder if they were going to San Francisco because that's where the mint was. They were going to make all the dust coins.
Yeah, it gets to that in the end.
Oh, okay.
But that's what they definitely were doing. So there was a mob of people waiting back in Lewiston when they got there. Beachy, the sheriff, and the soldiers managed to get prisoners loaded onto the stagecoach, but they couldn't approach the door of the jail because the crowd was so large. So in the 1800s, it's hard to imagine like crowds of people. I mean, I don't know why I can't really picture it in my head. What's a crowd? 20 people, you know?
Right.
It's kind of what I think about.
And this, like, stagecoach, like, Cinderella style pulls up and is like...
Right. Hello, everybody.
It is weird.
Yeah. But eventually the crowd was convinced to move because they're basically stating we can't start the trial until we get the prisoners, booked into the jail. So move your asses. Let's get this going. The trial began on January 19th, 1864. And I'm going to say this name wrong. Enos. Enos.
Yeah. I don't know.
Enos. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but anyways, we'll just say Enos.
Okay.
So Enos Gray was the prosecutor. J.W. Anderson and W.W. Thayer represented the outlaws.
Why don't they have names? Why are they like...
I don't know. But back in the day, I think there's a lot of people that went by those names. Like, they were always, like, initials. You know what I mean?
Because there was, like, so many, like, William Wallace's. Yeah. They just went by WW.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, Billy Page was the prosecution's star witness, giving testimony that proved that the three men had motive and opportunity. And in fact, they did murder Magruder. And so the jury found the men guilty and sentenced them to death. And the hanging actually took place on March 9th, 1864. So, but they execute people fast back in the day. It's only,
not 18 years like our first throwback to our episode 1. Where it took like 18 years. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely crazy. And these were actually the very first legal executions. So that's something that's really interesting to know about. And in the end, Beachy, our good friend Beachy with the cool name, he was later reimbursed $6,240 for his expenses because basically nobody really cared about what he was saying. They didn't really believe him at first. So he was doing a lot of this investigation on his own, and he was just roping in different officials from different places to, come and help him.
Plus like travel expenses and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just like his travel expenses, things that he's purchased, like paying I'm assuming he had to pay some of these people to come along with him, that sort of thing. So, but the remaining money the outlaw stole was recovered and made into coins by the San Francisco Mint.
Oh, okay.
And so this was around $17,000 is what I read. There was some discrepancy between like $15,000 and $25,000.
Yeah.
But most of them said $17,000, and it was actually given to Carolyn Magruder. So his widow, yeah. So she was able to at least have something in the end. Obviously, that's not compensation for your husband getting murdered or anything, but
right.
At least you have something that can support you a little bit.
Right, and 4 kids. The oldest is 15, and the youngest, I think, was 7.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
And
especially back then.
Oh, yeah.
Because women have, like, nothing.
Right? She can't work. I mean, what's she going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
On our YouTube channel, we'll also have where you can see pictures of these people, too. Because I did find quite a few pictures of Lloyd and... Is it Carolyn or Caroline? Carolyn.
Yeah, I say Carolyn, but I think you can go either way. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're both very good-looking people. Like, for 1860s, I'm like, damn, get it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're good-looking people. And then I had a picture of Billy, is it Billy Page? Billy Page. And he looks like a rough fellow.
Yeah. Some of the pictures I definitely saw when I was researching stuff, and I'm like, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Is that it?
That is all I have.
All right. Awesome. Oh, I wanted to mention his dream. So I saw mentioned in multiple places but it's something where, I mean, this is 1863, so this is a long-ass time ago. But it's something where some people say, oh, they just added this story to make it more dramatic and make it more entertaining, and it's not true. And then other people say, no, that's totally true. So supposedly, Hill Beachy, which is the dude who ran the inn that went off on his own and kind of became a vigilante and was running after these guys that he knew killed his friend. He supposedly, the day before Lloyd left, he had a dream that his friend was killed in the mountains and that these 3 did it. And I saw in one place that he saw them that morning when Lloyd left, and saw them like out the window of the inn, and they were just kind of acting kind of sketchy, and they were just like sitting on a rock, and they were like had masks over their faces, and we're just acting really, and like kind of whispering at each other, and we're just acting really suspicious. And so he was like, that was when he remembered, I had this dream last night that Lloyd was killed in the mountains on his way back from his trek for his gold, and that those three did it. So that's why he went after them. Like, that was kind of what started his suspicion in going after them. And
that's crazy.
Right?
That's kind of weird
so
to think about.
Right? And I don't know if that's true. And even if that is true, that kind of sounds sketchy on his part. Like, he was like, oh, well, I know it was them, and this is why you should arrest them, because I had a dream that it was them.
Right.
Which sounds super suspicious and sketchy. Like, he was like, these guys are sketchy people, like, we're gonna blame it on them. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I'm just saying it doesn't look good. And I don't know.
No.
So, I never saw anywhere that it said where they found the bodies, or that they found the bodies of the mules. But in 1990, so fairly recently, I mean, yeah, that's 30 years ago, but it's still, it's in my lifetime, okay? It's recent.
Yes, exactly.
In 1990 or 91, I think it was 1990, that some, like, I don't know if they were treasure hunters or just historians, and they went out to Magruder Pass where they believed that the murders took place, and they had metal detectors, and they found some things. They found, like, some belt buckles and some tools and things like that, where they're like, we're pretty sure that this is what that's from, is from this Magruder massacre. So they didn't find any, like, bones or anything, but they did find these like artifacts, which was kind of cool.
That's interesting. That is really cool. Yeah.
And I did find a picture of that, so we'll throw that up on the YouTube video as well.
Awesome.
So like and subscribe us, guys. YouTube.
Yes.
And it's True Crime State of Mind on there. So make sure that you follow us on all the socials. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Patreon, all the things. And we are also at truecrimestateofmind.com. You can also email us at truecrimestateofmind@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's it. Just when you think you're out,
we pull you back in.
Woo woo. Oh, and next week is Oregon. So we're going to take a trip back west. And we're going to go to Oregon.
Love Oregon.
I know, I do too. My sister used to live there, and I loved it.
Love it.
Yeah. So we're heading there next.